In a world where everything constantly produces sound, people seem to have forgotten the meaning of silence. We wake up to the sound of alarm clocks, step out into streets filled with chaotic car horns, work amid voices, notifications, meetings. And then return home to phones, televisions, social media, and countless layers of digital noise. Even when there is no external sound, the mind remains noisy with thoughts, worries, memories, and imaginations about the future. Silence seems to have become a luxury that modern humans no longer know. Yet from the earliest origins of spiritual traditions, silence has never been meaningless emptiness. On the contrary, it has always been seen as a doorway into the depth of being. Sages, meditation masters, and enlightened beings have all withdrawn into stillness to seek truth. They did not escape life, but entered more deeply into themselves through quietude. In silence, they did not only hear the world, they heard the voice of the soul. Buddhism places particular emphasis on the role of stillness in the path of spiritual growth. But stillness here is not merely the absence of speech, not a retreat into isolation, and not an avoidance of life. Stillness in the Buddhist spirit is a state of deep awareness, where the mind is no longer carried away by surface disturbances, but returns to its original clarity. Imagine a lake. When the wind blows strongly, the surface ripples, distorting the reflection of the sky and surrounding scenery. But when the wind settles, the lake becomes mirror-like, reflecting everything clearly. The human mind is the same. When agitated by anxiety, anger, fear, or ambition, we cannot see truth fully. Only when the mind settles into silence does wisdom begin to shine. In modern life, we often fear silence. When there is no external noise, we must face ourselves, with unhealed pain, unanswered questions, and wounds that still ache quietly. We fill the emptiness with entertainment, conversation, and busyness, just to avoid facing stillness. But this very avoidance pulls us farther away from ourselves. Silence is not a meaningless void, it is a living space of awareness. In stillness, we begin to hear our breath more clearly, our heartbeat, and the subtle movements of the mind. We realize that behind the noisy layer of thoughts, there always exists a peaceful depth that we rarely touch. In meditation, silence is not the goal, but the environment in which consciousness matures. When sitting still, we do not try to empty the mind, we simply observe what is happening with awareness. Thoughts come and go, emotions rise and fall, but the inner observer remains, silent, clear, and unmoved. It is precisely in this space of stillness that spiritual transformation begins to unfold. We see more clearly the impermanent nature of all things. Joy does not last forever, sorrow does not exist permanently. And even the self we cling to is only a continuously changing psychological structure. This insight gradually melts attachment, allowing us to move through life more lightly. Many people think that spiritual growth requires learning more, reading more books, listening to more teachings. But Buddhism reminds us that sometimes the greatest progress does not come from accumulating more knowledge, but from reducing the noise in the mind. When the mind is sufficiently still, truth reveals itself naturally, without force. Silence is also where compassion is nurtured. When we speak less, judge less, and react less out of habit, we begin to listen more deeply to the suffering of others, and of ourselves. We no longer rush to conclusions or arguments, instead, we open our hearts to understanding. In silence, the heart becomes softer and more inclusive. Stillness does not separate us from the world, it helps us see the world more clearly. Those who practice silence do not become distant or cold, they become more present, more sensitive to the life around them. They still live in the world, working, loving, facing challenges, but with a less agitated mind. In the deepest moments of silence, we may sense that we are not merely small, separate individuals, but part of a larger flow of life. We see our connection with nature, with others, with the universe. And from this awareness, a new kind of peace arises, a peace that does not depend on external circumstances. The role of silence in spiritual growth is not a call to withdraw from life, but an invitation to return to the inner depth within ourselves. It is a journey of discovering how stillness can become the greatest teacher, guiding us from noise to clarity, from chaos to peace, from ignorance to awakening. This writing will lead you into a space of quietude, where you can look deeply into the nature of the mind, understand the role of meditation, and realize that spiritual growth does not come from doing more, but from being more fully present in silence. Because in the end, the deepest truths of life are not spoken in words, they are only heard in silence. Stillness in Buddhism is not the absence of sound, but the settling of the mind. A person may be in a perfectly quiet room, yet inside remain chaotic with thoughts, anxieties, memories, and desires. Conversely, one may stand in the middle of a noisy, crowded street while the mind remains still, clear, and not swept away by the outer turmoil. Therefore, the true role of stillness in spiritual growth lies in inner transformation, not in withdrawing from the world. In daily life, the mind is like a constantly moving river. Thoughts continuously arise, overlap, and intertwine, emotions surge and recede. Memories of the past and worries about the future pull us in all directions. We rarely truly remain with the present moment. Stillness, in the Buddhist sense, is the process of returning that river to a state of clarity. When the mind settles, we begin to see more clearly the nature of ourselves and of life. Meditation is the most important doorway into inner stillness. When we sit in meditation, we do not try to suppress thoughts or create an artificial emptiness. We simply observe the breath, feel the body, and become aware of what is happening in the mind without judgment. At first, the mind may be very noisy, like a dust-filled room that has been stirred up. But if we are patient, the dust gradually settles, and the inner space becomes clearer. Within this space of stillness, we begin to realize that we are not our passing thoughts. We see that anger comes and goes, sadness arises and fades, worry appears and then subsides. This realization frees us from blind identification with our emotions. We are no longer controlled by them like a puppet, instead, we become a clear and aware observer. Stillness also helps us understand impermanence more deeply. When the mind is sufficiently calm, we clearly see that no state lasts forever. Joy does not endure endlessly, nor does sorrow remain forever. This awareness gradually dissolves the fear of attachment and the obsession with loss. We learn to receive life as a continuously changing flow, rather than trying to grasp what cannot be held. Another important role of stillness is the cultivation of wisdom. When the mind is noisy, we easily react out of habit, prejudice, and impulsive emotion. But when the mind is still, we have the space to look more deeply, reflect more carefully, and act more wisely. Many wrong decisions in life do not come from a lack of information, but from a lack of inner stillness. In relationships, stillness helps us listen more truthfully. When we are not driven to speak, to prove ourselves, or to defend the ego, we can truly hear the pain, fears, and needs of others. Stillness becomes the foundation of compassion. We no longer react from defensive instincts, but respond with understanding. Stillness also helps us heal inner wounds. Many psychological wounds cannot be resolved through words or reasoning, but need to be held within the quiet space of awareness. When we sit with pain without running away, it is gradually transformed. We realize that suffering is not an enemy, but a doorway into spiritual depth. On the path of spiritual growth, stillness does not pull us away from life, it helps us live more deeply within life. Those who practice stillness do not become cold or detached. On the contrary, they become more sensitive to the beauty of each moment, the morning sunlight, the sound of birds, the steady rhythm of the breath, or simply the feeling of being fully alive in the present. Stillness also opens a sense of connection between ourselves and the universe. When the mind is sufficiently calm, the boundary between self and world becomes blurred. We no longer feel lonely or separate, but recognize ourselves as part of a larger flow of life. This awareness brings a deep kind of peace that no external circumstance can destroy. Ultimately, the role of stillness in spiritual growth is not to lead us to some distant, transcendent state, but to help us return to our true nature, simple, clear, and filled with love. Stillness is not the destination, it is the path, the teacher, the space that nurtures wisdom and compassion. And as we walk this path, we gradually realize that the deepest answers of life do not come from external voices, but are heard in the stillness of the heart. Stillness on the journey of spiritual growth is not the disappearance of the world, but a deeper presence within that world. People often believe that to grow spiritually, one must leave ordinary life behind, retreat into mountains and forests, avoid society, or live isolated from worldly noise. But Buddhism points out that true growth does not come from separating oneself from life, but from seeing life more clearly through a still mind. In modern life, our minds are constantly pulled by information, images, sounds, comparison, and pressure to succeed. We wake up holding our phones and fall asleep under the glow of screens. The mind no longer knows how to rest. And it is precisely this lack of stillness that causes us to lose connection with ourselves, with the heart, and with the deeper dimension of life. We may be successful outwardly, yet empty within. Stillness, in the spirit of Buddhism, is an inner space where wisdom and compassion can arise. When the mind is sufficiently calm, we begin to see things that were previously obscured by the noise of thought. We see more clearly our unconscious habits, how we react when hurt, how we cling to praise and blame, how we fear loss, and how we sometimes lose ourselves just to be accepted. Meditation is an essential path into stillness. When we sit in meditation, we are not trying to escape life, but learning to meet life with a different mind. We sit quietly, feel the breath, and observe what is happening within without judgment. At first, the mind may be chaotic like a storm. But if we are patient, the storm gradually settles, and a peaceful space begins to reveal itself. Within that space, we realize that we are not our passing thoughts. We see that anger is only a wave, sadness only a cloud, worry only a gust of wind. This realization frees us from blind identification with emotion. We are no longer carried away like a leaf on flowing water, but stand firm like a quiet rocky shore. Stillness also helps us understand impermanence more deeply. When the mind is sufficiently calm, we clearly see that all states come and go. Joy does not last forever, nor does sorrow remain permanently. This understanding gradually dissolves the fear of attachment. We are no longer desperate in suffering, nor arrogant in success. We walk more gently through the ups and downs of life. In relationships, stillness plays an extremely important role. When we are not driven to speak, to argue, or to prove ourselves right, we can listen more deeply. We begin to listen not only with the ears, but with the heart. We hear the pain hidden behind others' words, the fear behind their anger, and the need for love behind their clumsy actions. Stillness becomes the foundation of compassion. Stillness is also the space that heals inner wounds. Many pains cannot be resolved through logic or advice, but need to be held within mindful presence. When we dare to stay with pain without running away, it gradually softens, transforms, and eventually becomes a source of wisdom. In everyday life, spiritual growth through stillness does not mean that we must slow down completely or abandon responsibility. We still work, still love, still face challenges, but with a less agitated mind. We no longer react instinctively, but pause, breathe deeply, and choose a more mindful way to act. Stillness also opens a deep sense of connection. When the mind is sufficiently calm, the boundary between self and world begins to blur. We no longer feel lonely or separate, but recognize ourselves as part of a greater flow of life. We see ourselves in nature, in others, in each present moment. From this, a deep kind of peace arises, peace that does not depend on circumstances. Ultimately, the role of stillness in spiritual growth is not to lead us to some distant transcendent state, but to help us return to our true nature, simple, clear, and filled with love. Stillness does not separate us from life, it helps us live more fully within life. If these reflections resonate with you, help you see more deeply into yourself, or bring you a moment of peace in a busy day, take a moment to write your thoughts in the comments. Each story and each reflection is a valuable part of our shared journey of awakening. And if you wish